Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. My name is Dr. Aletha Marie Harven. You can call me Dr. Harven, or you can call me by my first name, Aletha. I just want to say welcome, and I'm glad you're all here to help me kick off the third season of my webinar series, Transformative Conversations Promoting Equity and Inclusion and Education and Beyond. And the way I'm kicking off this new season is with my three-part series titled Black and Jewish Voices, Exploring the Kanye West and Kyrie Irving Controversy. So just to give you a recap, on Wednesday, November 30th, I spoke with Teresa Dranek from the Anti-Defamation League about anti-Semitism. On Thursday, December 1st, I spoke with Dr. Zach Ritter about Black and Jewish history, trauma, and collective liberation. And today, December 2nd, I am going to be talking with a panel of Black men who are going to be critiquing justice and accountability in relation to Kanye West and Kyrie Irving. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has been attending all of the sessions. I hope that you've been learning just as much as me, and it's just been great hearing diverse perspectives on what's going on right now. I'd like to introduce our panel of speakers now, and I'm going to start with Counselor Robert Grace. So, Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney Robert Grace works in the Major Crimes Unit, where he has successfully prosecuted over 100 homicide cases, including some of LA's most horrific and famous cases. Counselor Grace has been an outstanding prosecutor for 34 years, and prior to joining the DA's office, he attended UCLA for his undergraduate education and received his Juris Doctorate from Loyola Law School. During his tenure at the DA's office, Counselor Grace has been assigned to the hardcore gang, family violence, major crimes, and post-conviction and litigation divisions of the office. Counselor Grace has received many awards for his work as a deputy district attorney and is very active in the Los Angeles community, serving as chairperson of the UCLA Black Alumni Association Board of Directors and on the Board of Governors of Loyola Law School. Counselor Grace is also a vice president and founding member of the Black Prosecutors of Los Angeles and is active with the nonprofit Our Brother's Keeper, which helps the homeless. Hi, Bobby. Our next speaker is Avery Daniels. He is a native of South Carolina, where he received his bachelor's degree in history from South Carolina State University and his Master of Library and Information Science degree from the University of South Carolina with a concentration in archival administration. He began working at South Carolina State University in 2007 in the Department of Social Sciences and has been a historical collection coordinator since 2012. He is a past board member of the Palmito Archives, Libraries, and Museums Council on Preservation. Hi, Avery. Our next speaker is Dr. Cleveland Hayes, who is an Associate Dean of Academic Affairs and Professor in Urban Teacher Education at Indiana University. Dr. Hayes' research interests include the use of critical race theory in education, historical and contemporary issues in Black education, which include the school-to-prison pipeline, teaching and learning in the Latino community, whiteness, and the intersections of sexuality and race. Dr. Hayes is an active member of the American Educational Research Association, where he holds chair and executive committee responsibilities and is the vice president of critical race studies in education. Dr. Hayes's research can be found in prestigious journals such as Democracy and Education, Qualitative Studies in Education, Gender in Education, Urban Review, and Power of Education. Additionally, Dr. Hayes is the co-editor of books such as Unhooking from Whiteness, The Key to Dismantling Racism in the United States, and Unhooking from Whiteness, Resisting the Esprit de Corps. Welcome, Cleveland. Before I pose my first question, I would like to position myself in this conversation. As some of you know, sometimes during my sessions, I like to just post questions and listen to what the speakers have to say. And other times I interject and add my opinion a little bit more. We'll see how the conversation goes today. But in terms of positioning myself in this conversation, I'm approaching this conversation as a learner. I feel that I'm the kind of person who's very flexible in my own understanding of information. I love to learn from others. So that's how I'm positioning myself and bringing myself to this conversation today. Now, I would like to pose a question that helps to position all of the speakers. My first question is, can you tell the audience more about who you are, your background, and your involvement in social justice work?
Thank you, Aletha. In my day job, I'm a prosecutor with Los Angeles County and founding member of the Black Prosecutors Association of Los Angeles, which is a support group for Black prosecutors in different agencies in Southern California. And through that group, we've been doing a lot of work in trying to diversify um, the uh, the race and ethnicity of people who are prosecutors in the different prosecutorial agencies in Southern California, because we know if you have a diverse group of prosecutors or public defenders or other people, judges within the criminal justice system, then you'll have more sensitized viewpoints within the criminal justice system, and that can lead to better outcomes for Black and Brown people. We also work to make sure that people of color, specifically Black people, are treated fairly within the criminal justice system in terms of sentencing, charging, and all those types of things. So spend a lot of time doing that type of work. And then away from my day job, I spend a lot of time working with my alma mater, UCLA, in terms of admissions work, making sure that Black students are still going to be able to attend the University of California despite Proposition 209, which is the proposition that ended affirmative action in the state of California. Then also try to raise money to make sure that those students are able to attend UCLA once they get admitted. And then finally, a group of students who I attended UCLA with, we started an organization called Our Brother's Keeper. And we work to try to bring attention to homeless issues in Southern California. We started that 13 years ago. I think we were well ahead of the curve in terms of letting people know that there was a homeless crisis in the Los Angeles area. And unfortunately, we were proven right. But we're still working to try to make sure that that issue is first and foremost for government officials, and that they're responding to it. And we also started a program called Backpacks for the Homeless, where we provide toiletries and small clothing items for homeless folks here in the Southern California area. And we're actually in the midst of our holiday drive right now in terms of getting those backpacks together. So those are my social justice efforts.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Avery Daniels. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation to speak amongst these esteemed colleagues of mine here. Um, just a quick story of why I became an archivist. I was a history major, and I was thinking to myself, well, what did I want to do with a history degree? And I ended up doing an internship at the South Carolina Department of Archives and History. And while there, I was able to hold in my hand the original petition of Briggs versus Elliott, which is one of the major cases in Brown versus Board of Education. And that was the light bulb that came into my head and said, you know what, these are the types of things that need to be preserved. And this is why I ended up becoming an archivist. So in my day job, I assist researchers in their research, finding location, finding information for the research as it relates to our university, South Carolina State University. Currently, as far as social justice, as a part of my job, I received a grant through Project Stand, which is student activism now documented, and it's an effort to digitize materials related to marginalized communities in their fight for justice, namely people of color and LGBTQ community. So we're digitizing, we're going in the process of getting our school newspapers digitized, which has a lot of information of student protests, primarily one in particular associated with our institution, the what is called the Orangeburg Massacre, if you're not familiar with that, where 3 African-American men were killed by law enforcement in protest of a segregated bowling alley here in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And also 27 students were also wounded in that event. So that's a part of the things that I'm doing as far as social justice, as well as working with community organizations, like I said, care package for the homeless, donating canned goods to the Salvation Army and things of that.
Thank you so much. It's always good to hear more about what you all are doing, especially as it relates to social justice. So thank you so much. All right, so now I kind of want to jump right into the controversy surrounding both Kanye West and Kyrie Irving as it relates to anti-Semitism. And as I mentioned to the audience at the very beginning of this conversation, every session we've been covering what's been going on with both of these men. And so I want to ask you all, what are your general feelings about the actions of both men and the public's reaction to them? So I was thinking we could start with Kanye West, or Ye. As everyone knows, he's been in the press lately, quite a bit, right, for hurtful comments that he's been making and anti-Semitic behavior, and more recently, the company that he keeps, where we've seen him pictured with Donald Trump and Nick Fuentes, who is considered to be a white nationalist. So I'm wanting to start there. Let's talk about Ye. And anyone can jump in.
Well, I personally, when it comes to Kanye West, I am done with that situation. I think he has, it's beyond, people say, well, he's got a mental health issue and all of that. But I just don't know if I wholeheartedly believe that. And I think, I mean, I do think there's some mental issues going on there. I'm not dismissing that. But in terms of spending all my efforts into someone who is being very deliberate about doing harmful things to people, saying harmful things to people, I just can't engage in that. So, and what is in his latest his latest thing is like, I just can't with you. Because there's so much more work that we need to be doing around our own communities, and the displacement and gentrification and not having access to healthcare and poor quality of this and that. You just list the list. And so for me to be putting my efforts in, and historically we've had these issues. Historically, a quick history lesson, we've had these issues where we've had people who the oppressor becomes the oppressed, for lack of a better word. And so as far as Kanye West, as far as I'm concerned, I'm done with that situation.
Yes, I'll go ahead and chime in. I actually went and watched the Drink Champs interview of Kanye West, and honestly, I couldn't follow him. It's like he couldn't really express a clear thought in what he was saying. He did say some very hurtful things to a specific community, and that's unfortunate, which cost him a lot of his wealth. But I'm like Cleveland. I'm kind of done with Kanye. Everybody says he's a genius and all of these types of things, but it's just kind of hard for me to follow someone like that and be influenced by someone like Kanye.
Aletha, I think that Kanye has been very, very disappointing because he was somebody that from the hip hop community or the hip hop generation that I looked up to because of the stance that he took during the tragedy of Katrina, and him speaking out, and then subsequent things that he did to help the community of New Orleans and across that whole area. I think everybody that was Black kind of looked up to him and really thought of him as a person who not only excelled in the music area, but that he was conscious, and that he could lend his voice in the social justice area, which initially he did. So I think it is a shame, and both the previous panelists have said that they don't agree with the things that he's been saying, and they're done with him. I think that we have to be careful in terms of how any individual who is making harmful statements, how they are being portrayed and exhibited as being representative of the Black community, and that we don't want to have to spend a lot of time, as Dr. Hayes pointed out. We have too many other issues going on that we have to spend time, quote unquote, apologizing for Kanye. And I think that's kind of like what it has devolved into. But I also think there's another aspect of this that we have to be aware of, that that people like a Kanye can say things and they suffer consequences, as Avery has pointed out. He's suffered economic, maybe for him, devastating economic consequences. But also he's creating havoc with freedom of speech, and how freedom of speech is debated and weighed upon in American culture. And I think we'll probably get into that more, quote unquote, from a legal standpoint as we go along. I think that's just a kind of a teaser for people to be aware of, that both him and when we start talking about Kyrie Irving, that now it's kind of also dipped over into the area of freedom of speech, and how does American society deal with that from a governmental standpoint and a private standpoint, private business, and then from generally the public opinion.
Thank you all so much. It's always good to hear where everyone is at with what's going on. And then as we continue, Bobby, I would like to hear more of your thoughts really surrounding freedom of speech. Okay, so let's turn our attention to Kyrie Irving and how he received backlash from sharing a link to a film that seems to favor Black, African, Hebrew Israelites at what many feel is at the expense of white Jews. And I've mentioned this throughout these talks that I actually sat down and watched the film, and I can see the places in which there's problematic information that is presented. And I think when it comes to anyone searching, or searching for their own identity and trying to understand where they come from, it can be done in a way where other people aren't being, cut down in a way that's not really productive. But I just would like to know what you all's thoughts are as it relates to Kyrie and what's happened to him. He's back playing basketball now, and he has talked about his feelings since playing basketball again. But yes, I just want to turn the floor over to you all.
Well, I'll go first. I think Kanye is in a completely different position than, Kyrie is in a different position than Kanye, in that Kanye was or is an employee. Kanye West owns the means of production, so to speak. He owns his music, and that's primarily where he makes his money. Kanye found out that in terms of his fashion business, that he wasn't as quote unquote free as he thought he was. And he's kind of facing economic repercussion for that. Kyrie is an employee. And as an employee, he's subject to the rules and regulations of his employer, right? And a lot of employers have morality clauses, and NBA contracts have a moral clause, and it's very murky as to when the owner or when the NBA board of governors, which are actually the owners, and the commissioner could step in and say that you violated a moral clause. And that's kind of where Kyrie found himself in terms of something that he didn't do, in my opinion, volitionally, and meaning that he didn't make any anti-Semitic statements. He posted a video or a documentary that had anti-Semitic statements in it. And can he be punished for that under the NBA rules? Well, he was punished, and he seems like he's going to try to take legal action, maybe to clarify what his punishment was or what could have been, and maybe he has legal redress. But I think it's a good example for everybody, Aletha, as you pointed out, that in order to find ourselves as Black people or anybody, in terms of understanding your culture or understanding your place in society, that we don't have to tear other people down in order to raise ourselves up or to bring a highlight or attention to it. And I think any athlete or any person has to be careful when you're an employee of how you're being portrayed, or how you, if you want to put it in this framework, how you might be used by other people to bring attention to their cause or their movement. Now, this has happened many, many times to Black athletes over the years. And I think we'll probably have a very robust discussion about what can athletes say? And should they be treated any differently than anybody else that makes a public statement? And again, we'll be talking about freedom of speech and how that plays in. And we'll probably be juxtaposing Kyrie to other people who have made statements that they felt were quote unquote social justice statements or social issues. Obviously, Colin Kaepernick comes to mind. But it's very, very interesting how Kyrie and Kanye both kind of merged or came together at the same point of time in history, and how they are both being dealt with, and how we all as a Black community, and specifically as Black men, and there are 3 Black men on the panel, how are we reacting to that?
I don't think, and I'm not as versed in the Kyrie situation as I am more so the Kanye situation. So I just want to put that out there in terms of full disclosure and transparency. But I know we'll get into this later. I don't personally think that Kyrie was malicious in terms of what he was doing. Where on the other hand, Kanye is he's absolutely being malicious in what he's doing for whatever gain he's trying to get as a result of that. And I have not seen the film, so I don't know the context of what that was in. But the only thing that what gives me a little bit of concern with the Kyrie situation is that making sure it appears to me, and this is historical, the NBA is just a reflection of the larger society, as the prosecutor has said that that rules are not necessarily even the punishment is not necessarily even distributed across people. And so I just want to make sure that I guess for me is I want to make sure that when people say something or do something that everybody is equally, as best as possible, treated in the same way and around some of the same conversations. And I guess the elephant in the room for the time, for sake of better, it's the Jerry Jones photo. He was at Arkansas. He was 14. But Tamir Rice was 12. So, and everybody's want to be dismissive of that. And I just worry about these people who are quite very dismissive of that, and not really, looking at the whole. And this is not about council culture and politically correct. It's just about making sure that people can live their best lives in their best places without a whole lot of fear and retribution. I mean, well, right. Somebody just put on the, Emmett Till was 14. So anyway, that's what I don't want to, that's what I'll just add with that, and I'll give other panelists the opportunity to share.
Yeah, I'm a little more sympathetic for Kyrie because I don't think he was malicious either. I tried to watch some of the video today. I think I maybe got an hour in. It's a really long video, and there's a lot of things in there. He comes with I guess so-called references to what he's saying, and I just think that if people disagree with it, then come back with your own information and resources and references to refute what's in the documentary. I think with Kyrie, basically, he said, I'm paraphrasing, I think, he said, if I know who I am, then I cannot be anti-Semitic. So I kind of wrote down, I kind of try to look up, well, what is a Semite? And I got this from Britannica.com. It says, a Semite is a name given in the 19th century to a member of any people who speak one of the Semitic languages, a family of languages spoken primarily in parts of Western Asia and Africa. The term, therefore, came to include Arabs, Akkadians, Canaanites, Hebrews, some Ethiopians, including the Amhara and the Tigrayans, and Armenian tribes. So if, and then we go into the Bible as well, when you talk about, the Semites are the descendants of Shem and Abraham. That goes back to Genesis 11:10. So if he feels that he as himself is connected to that, then I guess him posting that link to that video was saying, hey, I'm a part of this too. That's my opinion. And when you talk about Jerry Jones and say he was 14, remember George Stinney here in South Carolina was the youngest African American child executed, at 14 years old, for something that he was exonerated for later on. So I'm a little bit more sympathetic for Kyrie, and he as an athlete, you can post or tweet anything out there, and you have to be a little more responsible. He didn't say anything with it. He could have gave it more proper context to let everybody know what he was trying to convey, but he didn't do that, and now we are here where we are with that.
But I also think it's very important that, as we have these conversations, that, across multiple intersections of race and ethnicity and gender and sexuality and all those kinds of things, that we don't get into oppression Olympics, because I think what that does more harm than good, because the end goal is really, really about this collective humanity and the ways that we can engage collectively to dismantle whiteness and white supremacy. Because whiteness and white supremacy is the evil, is the evil here that we need to undo. And yes, people of color can be complicit in maintaining, as going back to Homeboy from that was married to one of the Kardashian sisters. They can be complicit in maintaining and upholding whiteness and white supremacy. So I think, if we get nothing, in my opinion, it's nothing that we get from these conversations this evening, is that whiteness and white supremacy is the evil. And that is what we need to undo. And that we have to do that collective, and equity is a low goal. The collective humanity and recognizing the humanity and others is the objective that we all should be trying to do. And whatever line of work that we do, that we work in, and I don't care how much melanin or lack thereof somebody has in their skin, they should be held to account for upholding or trying to uphold white supremacy and giving Hitler all that praise that he did. I'm talking about Kanye West. He needs to be held to account for that, and he should be held to account for that.
Thank you all so much for your responses to that question. And for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, the movie in question here, the film, I'm going to refer to it as a film because it is supposed to be a documentary. There is a lot of information in that film. Hebrews to Negroes, Wake Up Black America. There's so much information. It's 3.5 hours long. So it took me 2 days to watch it when I did, because I needed a break. Because it's a lot of information, and I think a lot of fact checking may need to be done. But yes, like I had said earlier, and like you're saying too, Avery, there was problematic information being discussed in the movie, and I can definitely see why people are upset. So if anyone else has seen the film, please let us know what your thoughts are as well. So my next question, I want to move into talking about accountability for Black people and Black men in this country. And so my question is, how do you feel about the public's reaction and treatment of both Kanye West and Kyrie Irving? I think I know where you might be leaning when it comes to Kanye West, because there's new developments almost every day regarding him. But I definitely want to know how you feel about the public's reaction and treatment. And then maybe we can start with you, Bobby, or I saw you unmute yourself. Avery, did you want to go first, Avery?
Yeah, I mean, you can start with Bobby. I can go first. It doesn't matter. I'll go ahead and go.
No, go ahead, Avery.
Okay, appreciate it. As far as accountability, I think the public outcry about it was warranted. Especially in the case of Kanye, he was very egregious in what he was doing and what he was saying. Kyrie, he deserved accountability too, but I think the accountability has to go across the board. And I think this was Kyrie was saying, and what LeBron initially touched on the other day. Keep the same energy. When other people do things, keep that same energy when they do things. Just like the Jerry Jones situation, there were a lot of people in the media, primarily Stephen A. Smith, who were kind of shying away from it. Don't shy away from it. If you want to ask these questions, these non-basketball or non-sports related questions, then ask them of everybody when it comes about. When Brett Favre was accused of stealing all this money from the welfare system, I mean, it was just kind of just swept under the rug. Where's the accountability in that? So just keep the same energy across the board. Shaquille O'Neal called Kyrie an idiot, but at the same time, he showed the film in his movie theater. Jeff Bezos is the owner of Amazon, and he's promoting it on his platform, but nobody says anything about that part. So when it comes to accountability, spread it all the way across the board.
I would jump in and echo everything that Avery's saying. I think with the advent of Twitter, social media, whatever, we can't really dictate now anymore, quote unquote, what the public reaction is going to be, because it doesn't have to be filtered through the media. I think everybody's kind of in agreement that Kanye is getting negative treatment from kind of all quarters, because as you pointed out, Aletha, he's continuing to do things in real time that everyone would probably say are anti-Semitic, racist, anti-LGBT, et cetera, right? I think with respect to Kyrie, there's a couple things going on. Is one, specifically the Jewish community was upset about what they found in the documentary. I would probably venture to say that the majority of people never actually saw the documentary. They heard people talk about the documentary, and any references to denying the Holocaust or saying that Hitler is a great person, that's absolutely wrong, right? But frankly, the issue of Black Hebrews and their claim to be Israelites, those guys have been on the corners in LA for decades. They have like a loudspeaker. They're there in Leimert Park. Those of you that know Los Angeles, that's like a Black area of Los Angeles. They're there every Saturday, every Sunday with a loudspeaker talking about. So what they've been saying is not new. How the state of Israel came to be, and the controversy over that goes back to 1948. Right? And before that. So there's always been a controversy about those issues. I think it's always going to be difficult when athletes delve into the political world or social justice world, because the sports world is not really set up for that. And now you see more sports media being willing to ask those types of questions, whereas before they would never ask any question like that. And even going back to Colin Kaepernick and how he was treated by the media, most of the media at that time were like, why are you even bringing anything like this up? This isn't the venue for that. So I think we're seeing a sea change with respect to how the sports world, as Avery's kind of bringing it up, is now intersecting with the real world, and how the public wants their athletes to weigh in on social justice issues, or they can get a backlash. I think that Kyrie has to take responsibility for knowing what he posts on any types of his social media, and he should be prepared to answer questions now about that if he, quote unquote, endorses something. And as Dr. Hayes pointed out, we have to be cognizant of how everybody is being treated, not only by the sports world and what happened to Kyrie in terms of him being suspended, but how is he being treated across the board with respect to sports media, because there were a lot of sports journalists, some that were Jewish, some that were not. Shaq called him out, said a lot of things, but those same people didn't say things when other people did disrespectful things or hurtful things. So you have to be consistent. I'm hoping that the whole Kyrie incident will bring focus to the media as a whole as to what they're highlighting, what questions they're asking, and that everybody will be held accountable. And you're never going to be able to be held to the same standard because Black athletes are just, told to shut up and dribble, right? But as a LeBron is able to say way more things than even Jim Brown, who is probably the most figure from the early 1960s who's outspoken on issues as an athlete in professional sports. I say that the athletes from 1968, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, are really the true guys who spoke out in detriment to their careers in the 1968 Summer Olympics, but they weren't professional athletes, but they still suffered probably more than any other modern athlete for the stance that they took at that time. But LeBron is much more freer to say things than a Jim Brown or a Bill Russell or a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who those guys are kind of real time for us. And, we saw their careers and then what they did in their post careers, and we can juxtapose how much freer that they were able to say things once they stepped away from sports, but then when they were actually in the sports field. Kyrie's got to figure out how to navigate all that. And I am sorry that he has become a flashpoint for kind of this whole discussion, because I don't think that what he did rose to the level of vitriol that he's faced for what he actually did. And he himself did not make any anti-Semitic statements. The documentary he posted had parts of it that can be viewed as anti-Semitic. He should have to answer questions for that. But I don't think that the general public really kind of understood all of the nuances here, and Kyrie's kind of paying the price for all of that.
Thank you for your responses. And
Aletha, if I can interject just 1 second. Talking about accountability, I do photography as well, and so I do a lot of shopping on Adorama and B&H Photo. Well, those two companies are largely run by the Jewish community, and B&H has had several incidents of discrimination against its employees, primarily of those of people of color. But you rarely see any situations or people talking about situations like that. And also, when we talk about people who speak about anti-Semitism, it's kind of like who says it and when it kind of blows up. Like, I used to watch South Park a lot, and if anybody has watched South Park, the character Kyle was a Jewish kid, and the character Eric Cartman used to really lay on him about being a Jewish kid or whatever the case may be. But I never really heard anything about that being labeled as anti-Semitic. So can't pick and choose who you want to attack, if that makes sense.
thank you so much for what you said. It's a lot to think about what you're all saying. And my last major question is in regards to justice. Do you feel that justice has been served in both of these situations?
Let me jump in real quick since I'm the legal person. Let's say, so neither one of them have been charged with a crime, and actually nothing that they said would rise to the level of being prosecuted for something that they did criminally. And I think that's important to point out, because we'll get back to the freedom of speech. In America, we have a long tradition of the idea of freedom of speech, and we compare ourselves to other people around the country about that we have much more ability to say things in American society than they do in other countries. We might be seeing a change here in America with respect to that, and how that speech can be curtailed more about what you say, how you say it, because so much speech is now out of the control of major media, right? So Kyrie was able to post this documentary on his social media page, and then people were able to consume that and take off on it. Whereas in years past, that kind of messaging would have been curtailed by mainstream media and never really would have gotten out, right? And so we can see now that private industry is having to react economically to people saying things that they are connected to from a business relationship. And that's how, quote unquote, justice, if you will, is being played out or meted out to both Kyrie and to Kanye, because they both lost money, endorsements, business relationships because of anti-Semitic or alleged anti-Semitic statements that they made or that they, quote unquote, aligned themselves to. In Kyrie's case, the question becomes like, since he didn't really say what was, quote, purported to be anti-Semitic, he was pushed into a corner to apologize for having put it on his page. And that is a step that we have to kind of take a hard look at in terms of what is that going to do with respect to the idea of American freedom of speech and how that plays out. Because are we now going to be saying that private companies are going to dictate what you can and cannot say based on the threat of you being fired or losing a business relationship? And what does that do to the American notion of freedom of speech? I think that's kind of like what we need to be looking at in terms of the justice aspect of it.
Thank you so much, Bobby. And I know everyone's seen the comments that have been posted in the chat. And one has to do with Kanye West and Ye and how he's been demonstrating, according to, the person who wrote this, she said that he has been demonstrating problematic behavior for a while, and he's been trolling the Black community. And I know we all have, or I think most of us have heard him say that slavery was a choice, which I know he received a lot of backlash for that. And I believe that a few years back, he apologized for that later. But I'm trying to go through this really quickly. She said, as a Black woman, I'm not surprised. However, I am saddened that it took Kanye West to exhibit anti-Semitic behavior for a collective uprising to say enough is enough for companies, non-Black, people of color, and non-women to use their influence. What do you all have to say about that? Because this is, what this audience member is saying has been discussed more publicly, online. And so I don't know if anyone wants to address that. Thank you so much for your comment. And then let me see. Go ahead, Avery. I see that you look like you were going to comment. Okay.
Oh, I wasn't, but I think it kind of goes to, how can I say this? I think it kind of goes to where people place value at, whether, I don't think they see us as a valuable asset to America, in a sense. So when we say things about ourselves, it's just like, okay, they've been saying things about themselves for a long time. But when we say things about another community that has a backing, and not necessarily it can be the Jewish community, it can be the LGBTQ community as well. If you say something about them as well, the hammer will come down. But when we say things about ourselves, I'm kind of like her. I'm not surprised either.
It's interesting what you said about being valuable. Like our humanity as Black people isn't always recognized, which is really unfortunate. However, somewhere people, I think, have to know we're valuable because we're used a lot. Our people are always taking from our culture, taking our ideas, just taking everything, that we have, and are using it for their own gain consistently. This has been going on throughout history. But like you said, but yet, it's an interesting thing, but yet we're told we're not valuable. But it's like, well, then, everything I say, I do, my moves, people are taking it and using it. So it's very interesting, right? What's going on. And I do think it's unfortunate that it took what we're seeing happening right now for instance, Kanye West to, I guess, be called out in a way. But I've always felt there were comments that he'd make and behaviors that he engaged in that I've always thought for a long time, honestly, has been problematic. So That's just
But
me.
you can have, they recognize our value. They just don't recognize our humanity. And historically, they've recognized our value since 1619 and beyond earlier. And so they've recognized our value. And I think originally Kanye probably was thinking that this was, in one of the reasons why they didn't give any pushback, there was some value in him saying those things. Otherwise there would have been some consequences in saying something anti-Semitic or anti-LGBTQ. There's no value in that. There is no and what I mean by no value in that, there's no I guess what I'm trying to say is that in those spaces, in those communities, they see the humanity in those spaces, but they don't see the humanity in ours. Hence why Kanye can say the things that he says, and it's like, oh, it's just dismissed. But you see the humanity within the Jewish community, the humanity within the LGBT community, white LGBT community, not people of color LGBT community, around that. And number two, something that I think has to be a much larger conversation that we don't have time this evening, is we got to talk about anti-Blackness in those spaces. Number one. Number two, also to include, we need to also recognize the performative nature of some of this, where people within professional sports and at the collegiate level all of a sudden are concerned about the ways in which we engage on these conversations, because what Deion Sanders is doing in Jackson State has gotten folks afraid, because now our people are not going to go to Alabama and Georgia and Florida State and play and go. So they put all this hoorah around things that really are inconsequential, because they are afraid of these Black athletes. I'm talking about the PWIs. These Black athletes, it's like, oh, you know what? I am no longer going to Florida State to play. I can go to Jackson State. I can go to the NFL out of Jackson State, out of Valley, out of Alcorn. One year the NFL MVP went to Alcorn. Now, he obviously had to share with Peyton Manning, and that's another conversation. But the MVP came out of. So I think a lot of this is another conversation. A lot of this around this so-called, now want to have social justice conversation in the sports media. I don't know. I don't know so much about it at the professional level, but definitely at the collegiate level, because they are afraid of these 4-star athletes are no longer going to the PWIs because they can get all they can get from an HBCU.
I love what Deion Sanders is doing for Jackson State right now. I just wanted to put that out there. I was thinking of what you said.
Oh, and I just want to add that the defensive rookie of the year a few years ago came out of South Carolina State University, Darius Leonard, in Indianapolis Colts.
Thank you.
Well, I won't hold that against him. that he plays for Indianapolis, not that he went to South Carolina State.
Okay.
So with the time that we have left, if you want to address any of the comments that are in the chat, feel free to do that. But there are questions that are in the Q&A box. And so I thought I would pose those to you. So one question is, and I think this question came in when you all were originally talking about Kanye West, how can we help others to not be influenced, right? By perhaps what I'm assuming by what he's doing right now. What do you think?
Well, I think panel discussions like this are important, because I think everybody collectively said, I'm done with Kanye. And I think if more people do that, but we also have to speak out and say that, frankly, Kanye is being used by a lot of people in different media forms and platforms to make money, because they know that he will say and do things that will bring attention to their website, to their podcast, to their panel discussion, et cetera, et cetera. I think the majority of the Black community has been done with Kanye for a very long time, right? He's allowed himself to be used by political parties, political movements, and they listen to him. I don't know anybody that's really credible in the Black community that listens to him. And I think that we all collectively have to say that he's not representative of the Black community. He's not representative of Black thought. And he's definitely shouldn't be going to him for political advice. You shouldn't be going to him for any type of advice, frankly. And I kind of take Trevor Noah's position. It's like anybody that talks to him at this point should, people should start looking at their motives and why they're taking advantage of somebody who clearly is in mental health distress.
Thank you for that response. And then there's another question here. Do you think that if there was a higher level of censorship on potentially uneducated films, like the one Kyrie posted a link to, could help calm anti-Semitic sentiments? I don't know if anyone wants to address that question.
When you talk about censorship, then I think that kind of goes back to the First Amendment as well. Someone produces something, you don't have to watch it. But at the end, I went on Amazon, I looked for Birth of a Nation, and that film is advertised on Amazon as well. So if I'm gonna read, can you repeat the question again? Kind of lost my train of thought there.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought up that film because that is a very problematic film.
Right, because they're anti-Semitic stuff. So I'm sure there are anti-racist stuff on different platforms, just like there's anti-Semitic stuff, anti-LGBTQ stuff.
Well, I mean, that's unfortunate now that, again, we go back to it's the Wild Wild West now in terms of media. Like you can consume or get anything that you want from any multitude of mediums, like Parler. You can get all kind of racist stuff and content there if you want to go there. You can't really dictate now anymore what people can say or not say. The First Amendment part of it, that's going to play out in terms of what government actors do and what large corporations do. But in terms of people being able to get their message out, whether you agree with it or not, the days of being able to shut anybody up are over.
Thank you. And here's another question that has come in. Is it responsible for Kanye to use his mental health to justify his behavior? Many of us suffer from bipolar disorder and are not anti-Semites. What would you say to a Black person who suffers from a mental illness and feels frustrated by his nonsense and behavior?
Well, actually, I don't think Kanye has been using it as a crutch. In fact, he would probably tell you that he's not mentally ill, which is problematic in and of itself. I think that's a valid point that people are making, that he must harbor some anti-Semitic views, anti-LGBTQ views to even, say what he's saying. It came from somewhere. But I also think that we have to recognize that he and a lot of other people in American society, and unfortunately, a lot of those people are Black men, are suffering from mental health crises. But the majority of Black men who are suffering from mental health crises are not doing that in the glare of the media. They're in the shadows, and we only hear about it when something bad happens. But as a whole, our community is not getting the type of mental health that we need, mental health treatment that we need. And that's really the discussion that we should be having, is that how can we get services and attention to the people who are suffering from mental illness. And Kanye could really, really be of service to the larger society, and particularly the Black community, if he would admit that he had a mental health problem and would discuss the challenges that he's going through. And maybe that's the hope that we have for him, that maybe he can turn himself around and make himself useful again.
And I also think, I hope that, what has not been brought up is his children. And I guess the hope that he will need to get the help that he needs is to force the fact that that his children are going to be the factor that the decisions that he's making right now will have impact on them later. And so hopefully if that clicks somewhere down the line as he's doing all these things and saying all these things, that there's like, oh, what is going to be the impact? And you would think Kim Kardashian would have said something to him about it as well. What is this going to hit? What is the impact this is going to have on our kids later on? And when you are done with all this folderol, the backlash that it's going to have on our children later on, when they become old enough to really engage and look at see the social media and how history is going to remember their father.
And I think, where are his friends or his circle of people at? Why are they not in his ear saying, hey man, you might want to calm down a little bit? I know my friends would say, hey Avery, you acting up, man, chill out. So where are his friends in all of this too? And like I say, he has to recognize the fact that he has an issue. Once he acknowledges it, then he can get the help he needs.
And so I'll wrap this up. Thank you so much. I definitely think that, and I was looking at videos, prior to this series, the different series conversations, and I watched a video of Kanye where he was being interviewed, and he was talking about his mental health challenges. And so, like you said, or like you all are saying, of course, that's not an excuse, right, for poor behavior. But I do think, like you were saying, Bobby, there needs to be more conversations surrounding mental health within the Black community. In general, we know help is out here, but there still is a stigma associated with it. And it, at the end of the day, I do hope that Kanye does seek the help that he needs, and I hope that more people who are around him will help him out too, because it's just sad to see everything that's happening, because it doesn't, things don't have to be going in this direction, so it'd be interesting to see how everything continues to play out for him, for Kyrie, and yeah. Any last words from you all about any of this?
Well, thank you for putting on this panel discussion. I think it's a very important. The issues that you're raising, they're timely, and hopefully people got a lot out of it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you all. I appreciate it. I'm so glad that you were able to show up today and give us your opinion and share your thoughts with us on what's going on. And then also, I just want to thank the audience members who showed up today, and those of you who continue to stay on, because I know we're a little bit over time, but I just want to say thank you so much. And these recordings will be available very soon for you to watch, so you can watch the entire series if you've missed any of the programming. So thank you so much. Thank you again. I really appreciate this, and I'll talk to you all later.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.